Kanye West and Kyrie Irving and their anti-Semitic comments and behaviors recently. I said recently that you're seeing in this, you aren't given a platform to speak your truth, whatever you think that might be. You are given a platform to say what the people who are paying you to be there want you to say. And I think that these two men are finding that out firsthand right now, that you can't just go there and speak anything. Now, I am not here to defend the statements that they said, whether they might be anti-Semitic or not. I think we are going to find out along the course of this video. At least that's my intention. My intention is to look at the facts as they present themselves in this whole thing and try and see what we can decipher from all of this. First up, I think it's important to get a bit of understanding of the terms. So what is a Semite? So when you say someone is an anti-Semite, what exactly do you mean? Now, Semite means one thing presently, but Semite in the technical sense is referring to a whole group of different people, a group of people from generally that Levant region, Israel, Syria, Persia, Iran, the Arabs. So Arabians, Persians, Syrians, Jews, Jordanians, etc., etc. That whole Canaanites, that whole group there, they would all be considered as Semites. So if you're being technically, if you're speaking against some Arabs, you might be considered anti-Semitic. And if you're speaking against some Persians, Iranians, you might be considered to be anti-Semitic too, just by the way. But obviously in modern time, it has evolved a bit more to more specifically mean that hatred, that dislike, that contempt, that racism against Jewish people, more specifically the people that originate from the Israeli homeland of biblical providence. Now, I consider, when I look at anti-Semitism and how it's looked at in modern days, there's a kind of paradox of anti-Semitism that goes on, because a lot of what many anti-Semites are saying, many of them, the anti-Semitic tropes, the common anti-Semitic things they say is that the Jewish people have some kind of cabal, some kind of oligarchy, some secret group that they're trying to take over the world with. And very often that's a lot of along the lines of where the anti-Semitism goes. So that's the anti-Semitism, and in order to defend against that anti-Semitism, a lot of the times very powerful Jewish people try to make sure that no one says things like that. And you could understand how a paradox kind of develops there. Okay, the anti-Semitic trope is that Jewish people have an inordinate amount of power in the global society, and they're trying to hoard that power for themselves. And because that's an anti-Semitic trope, the many powerful Jewish people that there are in society attempt their best to make sure that no one says things like that. Now, they have good reason for not wanting people to say things like that, just by the way, because the problem is, if you think that the Jewish people secretly are trying to take over the world, shouldn't you be doing something about it? And that's the problem right there. People, very often, the people with this kind of thought, if that thought is allowed to develop and flourish into state policy, you tend to see people trying to do something about that. And during the course of the 20th century, we saw very gruesomely and in great gruesome detail what happens when people try to do something more specifically about that. So the trope is something that can possibly lead and has led before in history to some really horrible results, but in order to defend against that trope, it kind of seems like it leans into the very same trope. So before we dive into some of these stories and see if we could catch up on this whole series of events, make sure to hit that like button if you like this kind of content, and drop a comment. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you think about the entire issue. Tell me if you understand exactly what's going on here, or if it still doesn't really make sense to you. All right, an article from over on Forbes, Kanye West's anti-Semitic troubling behavior. Here's everything he said in recent weeks. Beginning in early October, Kanye West, also known as Ye, went on a spree of public appearances and interviews in which he spouted anti-Semitic comments and conspiracy theories, criticized Black Lives Matter, ended business relationships, and was blocked on social media platforms, leading to widespread criticism and disavowal by industry peers. Here's everything he said and what he does and doesn't regret. So they have a timeline here, a basic timeline of everything that went on through this whole bacchanal. And I think what the timeline starts with here, where it starts, I think is very important to a lot of this entire issue. October 3rd, West, Candace Owens, and at least one model wear shirts with White Lives Matter written on them at West's Yeezy fashion show in Paris. The Southern Poverty Law Center says the term is associated with a neo-Nazi group with that same name that was founded as a racist response to the civil rights movement Black Lives Matter. Now, bear in mind the Southern Poverty Law Center, a lot of those NGOs are just political organizations, and there is a lot of politics involved in a lot of all of this. And I think, to be honest, that's what a lot of this really has to do with. Because not that his statements may not be reprehensible in and of themselves, but the reason that I think a lot of it got so much focus and it got so much heat was because he was already outside of the political bounds. He was outside of the general political view of many in his industry. So it has widely been known for some time now that Mr. West at least flirts with the right-wing side of things, with the conservative Trump movement. This Candace Owens woman, she is a very prominent voice on that whole train. So having that as the base there, he's already outside of the general protection of the liberal Hollywood celebrity sphere. And if you don't understand there's protection there, then you may not understand a lot about Hollywood. This Harvey Weinstein character, this monster that was taken down not too long ago, it was known what he was doing for a very long time. There were jokes about it in the media for a very long time, but he was a darling and he had the right politics, so he was able to maneuver in that sphere. What I'm saying is not that one is good, one is bad, or anything of the like. It's that who is brought down has a lot to do with their political leanings. And the fact that he already started out there on the wrong side of liberal politics, he was already out in the open, willing to be attacked and open to be attacked. On October 4th, he was criticizing LVMH CEO Bernard Arnault at West's fashion show. The rapper baselessly claims on Instagram that Arnault killed my best friend, seemingly alluding to designer Virgil Abloh, who died of cancer last year, and later claims LVMH's elitism and racism affected Abloh's health. West is criticized by streetwear brand Supreme's creative director, etc., etc. And this is where things start to go down that seemingly anti-Semitic route, because the more he criticizes people, he starts to criticize more and more people of Jewish heritage. He criticizes Adidas, he criticizes lots of people in the record industry, and then he goes on to say something about he's going to go DEFCON on the Jews. And the truth is, he in an interview admits that he's dyslexic and he made a mistake. He didn't mean to say DEFCON, he meant to say DEFCON, as in the level of emergency of this whole thing. But nonetheless, it was taken as a kind of threat. And then he went on to point out that the Jews have some kind of mafia working and they're working against him. And then all of a sudden, when he started to point these things out, many people started to distance themselves from him. Adidas started to distance themselves from him. Many of his fellow black celebrities, many other rappers, etc., started to distance themselves from the statements. And this is where I found things very suspicious, because I've been generally up to date with a lot of things in hip-hop culture for a while. And something you would know widely is the comments that were being made by Mr. West is a very common trope inside of hip-hop. Many rappers subscribe to that belief that they are being screwed over by an elite class of owners at the high level. And the truth is, a lot of these owners are Jewish people. So he was pointing out something and making something aloud that was actually widely spoken of in the black community. I saw the famed host of Breakfast Club, Charlemagne the God, as he calls himself. He had quite a bit to say about it, and calling Mr. West, calling Ye a Nazi. But then there are videos of Mr. Charlemagne saying the very same things.
You can't speak bad about a Jewish person, because they have organizations and they're a close-knit group of people in power who will bring you down. Same thing with gays. You can't say nothing bad about gays because they move as a unit. Black people don't have that.
Like Jews don't go out and try to recruit people into the religion like, certain Christians and Muslims.
I'll be honest with you, I don't even feel comfortable talking about this. I'm sweating right now. There's certain things I don't like to talk about, and I love Jewish people. But they're powerful. And I don't want them to misconstrue anything I'm saying or take anything I'm saying the wrong way. So I would much rather not even have this conversation. I have a lot of...
You see, that isn't that basically the same kind of thing that Ye was saying, the same kind of thing that Mr. West was saying? That's the same kind of trope that the Jews have a lot of power out there, and if you criticize them, they're going to come down on you. That's the very same thing that Mr. West was saying. I find it just so ironic on top of that, that it seems like the solution that many of the Jewish people find to this is to do the very same thing that he is accusing them of, that they would shut down this kind of criticism. But as I said, you could understand why this kind of criticism would be, they would want to shut down that kind of criticism. There was a book, a kind of basis for a lot of this, a book written a long time ago. It isn't really written by one person, it's a kind of agglomeration of several different propaganda pieces. And it was in Europe for quite some time, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. And the idea of this book was one of the origins of the idea that these Jewish people have some kind of secretive group that they're trying to take over the world with. And the problem there is not just the criticism, because you would say that even if it's wrong, it might be a fair criticism because there are a lot of Jewish people in powerful positions, especially at that time in Europe. There were Jewish people who were running several of the largest central banks. There are still some Jewish people in those positions. So that is an area that, people would want to criticize. They want to criticize the people who run these things. But the problem is when you move it away from just the people who run the banks and you put it as the entirety of the Jewish people. Surely some Jewish people do not run banks. So maybe you're criticizing the bankers and you're putting it as you're criticizing the Jewish people. And the problem with this whole Elders of Zion protocol business is this book, this propaganda piece was used widely in the 20th century. It was a reading piece given to children during Nazi Germany. During the times of Nazi Germany. And you see, that's what a lot of the worst communists in Europe, the worst Nazis, nationalists, and fascists in Europe were about. A lot of them were on the idea, the reason they hated the Jews in Nazi Germany wasn't just racism. They had a good reason for doing it. The idea was that the Jews were taking over their rightful birthplace, their birthright, the home of these Germanic people. And that's the reason these Jews were just taking so much power. So now we have to take it back from them for the homeland. And then is the kind of worry people have when you start spouting these kinds of things, that maybe you might be wanting to head down the same road. And that's why people call you a Nazi if you say things like that. Okay, you criticize a wealthy Jew and all of a sudden someone is calling you a Nazi. You're like, wait, why is that happening? That's why it is happening now. As I said at the very beginning, this creates a whole paradox inside of this thing, because the fact remains there are indeed a lot of very wealthy Jewish people, a lot of very powerful Jewish people in and around many of these industries. And a lot of these industries are abusive, manipulative, and oppressive by nature. That's the nature of these entertainment industries. You go in there as a poor gangster rapper, they just pulled you off of the street with a criminal record. Yeah, they're going to kind of take advantage of you. A video here over on Twitter that was a clip from Breakfast Club with the same Charlemagne, and he was having an interview with Leo Cohen, and Leo Cohen is a massive figure inside of the music industry. He's an executive over at Warner Music Group. He's a founder of 300 Entertainment, which has a lot of these up-and-coming gangster rappers in their label. So he is a guy in control of a lot of this. And in the interview, they were talking about the nature of the rap industry and what the rap industry provides for the black community. And listen to what he says.
This opioid thing, man, is
But being a crackhead wasn't cool back then. Being a crackhead wasn't cool.
Now it seems like they're making it cool to be drinking lean and syrup and
It's the most dangerous. It's the most dangerous thing that's facing our society.
Are you
So why sign an artist that would promote that?
Because I already answered that question. You weren't paying attention. She asked me talent.
You notice he got stumped by that question. Okay, this is the most horrible thing that is facing our society right now. The young people are being encouraged to be junkies, to be on drugs. Okay, Charlemagne asks him, well, why sign an artist that encourages that?
Or issues. And I said talent. But I have to, I can't give up on people.
You don't think that's hypocritical though?
It's opportunistic. Yeah. I got people to feed. I got a business to run.
You're gonna make Dame Dash take this clip and call you a culture vulture.
And you see right there, exactly right there is the problem that many people in the black community have. They're saying that these people, these Jewish people, are coming into the community, taking and abusing the talent and promoting negative things that destroy that community. But again, yes, the executives may be Jews, but that still does not represent the entirety of Jewish people. And I think for black people, a good example would be the fact that for a lot of the Western developed world, black people are overrepresented in violent crime. Now, there are many varied reasons why that may be, just as there may be very varied reasons why many Jews may be in certain positions in executives in the entertainment industry. But if it is indeed that black people are overrepresented as statistics in violent crime, then should that be something that could be held against the entirety of the black community? Is that something that people should be able to take and point at the entirety of the black community and say, look, the black community is violent? I don't think many people in the black community would be appreciative of that. And similarly, I think it goes for the Jews. Like, okay, yes, there may be many executives that may be Jewish, and many executives, by the nature of their job, are exploitative, they are abusive, they are oppressive, they will take advantage whenever they can, but that isn't something that may represent the entirety of the Jewish people. Another easy example here is back again on Twitter. Tweet that got quite a bit of attention. Guess who benefits when these rappers die? And they're talking about the guy from Migos, Takeoff, that was recently murdered. And that's also true. For a lot of these guys, the rights to their music is with the music company. And if you were following a lot of Kanye West's story, you would understand that that is exactly the area that he has been focusing on for a long time, maybe obsessively so. And yes, his whole mental state may be a part of all of this too, but that's the area he has been focusing on, that these artists should be able to own their product, own what they created. And if it is that you look out into the industry and see that many of these artists that are being screwed over aren't owning their products because the record executives are the one owning their products, and then you see an overrepresentation there, and we end back up with the same kind of conspiracy. Now, as I was mentioning from before, what I find to be sad is the hypocrisy of a lot of members in the black community, where you see that many of them who were supporters of Farrakhan, the minister Farrakhan, Louis Farrakhan, he was kicked off of social media. He was banned from social media because of anti-Semitism. And if you go through the black celebrities and see how many of them are supporters of him, are fans of him, Snoop Dogg, many of them, they're openly fans of Minister Farrakhan. And I'm thinking like, okay, you're saying these things and now you're coming out against Mr. West, while the reality is you know that these things are commonly held beliefs inside of the community. So if you really believe that what he is saying is so reprehensible, then maybe what you need to do is actually deal with the problems that are there inside of the community. Explain to them that, okay, this is a problem that exists with executives, not with the race of the executives. And okay, fine, but don't pretend like this isn't something that is very common. And belief that many of them held up till very recently. And I don't even know if they changed the belief. And that to me is my chief problem with so much of it. It seems hypocritical. I wonder how many people are actually offended or actually worried that Mr. West is going to bring up that protocol of Zion elders business, and he is going to lead some kind of new wave of the Third Reich in modern times. I don't actually think many people are worried about that. I don't believe that. And obviously, just silencing him isn't going to work in changing his mind. Silencing him isn't going to change his mind nor change anyone else's mind. In fact, I think it may reinforce more people's thoughts about this, especially when you're seeing, I saw recently he came out with another bit where he released a message and you saw someone threatening to medicate him. I have you institutionalized again, where they medicate the crap out of you and you go back to Zombieland forever. Play date with the kids just won't be the same. Someone is threatening him to medicate him again. And the allegation that Mr. West gave is that he was wrongfully medicated even in the first place. That they were the ones that wrongfully medicated him, wrongfully diagnosed him, and played with his own sanity. He was just tired, he was just worn out, he was stressed, and they medicated him as if he was crazy, and that damaged his psyche. That's his own allegations. And then not to know that as they go through this, they find out his personal trainer, the guy who allegedly may have sent this message, is another Jewish person. So with something like that, yes, again, it's the same thing. One person doesn't represent an entire race. But if you are trying to forbid someone from pointing out things like this, you are not going to convince people otherwise. These are things that actually have to be dealt with. Someone threatening to institutionalize a grown man and medicate him till he's a zombie so he won't be able to have playdates with his children the same is a very scary threat. And you add that to the fact that there are clips like this one out there.
Convinced me I'm insane. They were trying to get me to take psychotic medication. Yeah. Like I'm sitting around, I was stressed out, but the people that were telling me I was insane, I believe that they knew what was going on. So this was troublesome. Yeah.
So you see allegations like that. That's Dave Chappelle from a long time ago, nearly 20 years or more ago. And he had these allegations of people trying to drug them and send them crazy, these young black celebrities. And this is the kind of thing that is propagated widely out there. Silencing these men is not going to make these kind of theories die down. Someone would just have to answer it, and then you would start to wonder, why is no one answering it? And people would start to wonder, okay, there might be some truth to it because no one is answering it. While it may not really be an issue of a racial thing, it's just a class thing. Wealthy people within a certain group, obviously they look out for each other. And if enough wealthy people are from a same cultural group, I think they would indeed look out for each other too. It's a kind of obvious thing. I don't necessarily think it's a grand conspiracy. And the problem is when you make it seem on one side like it's overly too much of a grand racial conspiracy, you make it harder to really understand some of the more obvious issues and be able to tackle these issues. Maybe you need to understand how to sign record deals and how to deal with corporations. While you might be thinking you need to be in a racial war with another group, you're fighting a racial war and you might be beating up someone of that race who has no effect on the executives in the boardroom. While on the flip side, if you make it that you ban criticism, it makes it just fester. So how is someone to criticize people who they actually think have evil intent? So there are billionaires out there that are Jewish and that do sponsor things across the world, and they are globalists. So a popular name, George Soros, as if you're over around on the internet, you would be familiar with that name. Another one, Klaus Schwab, and they say he may very well be Jewish. He has a Jewish name. I don't know for sure, but if there are criticisms of these men and their ideology and the intent of having a more global system, how does someone make that criticism without being called an anti-Semite? And if someone cannot make that criticism without being called an anti-Semite, yeah, that doesn't work either. That doesn't help to reduce discrimination or whatever else people are saying their intent is. And to just tack on to the last bit here with Kyrie Irving, to find out what exactly is the issue with him, is it's not even as deep as the issue with Kanye West, I think. And when you look at the reaction to it, you see again that overreaction, in my view, in my opinion, that reinforces the very same conspiracies. What to know about Irving's anti-Semitic movie post and the fallout? Kyrie Irving, he posted a link to a movie. The movie espoused several tenets of the Black Hebrew Israelite conspiracy, according to how you think about it. The general idea there, I have dug some into it. I don't know if some of you viewing this might be of that view, but there isn't a lot of sound historic basis for it. And I understand that the argument against that is that history is written by the victors and people can lie in history, and that is true, but there are several points that, just need to be logical. So some Hebrew Israelites, and that's the other thing, it's not a unified belief across the entire basis of the thing. But some Hebrew Israelites would believe and say that the different tribes of Israel are represented as different. Some one tribe of Israel would be the West Indians. They might be Ephraim. One tribe may be the Mexicans. Another tribe is the Native Americans. Another tribe is the American blacks. And I don't see how that works out logically if you're trying to attach that to the biblical story. It just does not really make sense. But that is a lot of the Black Hebrew Israelite belief. And the Black Hebrew Israelite believes that they are the real Jews. And that's why very often you would see that trope said. You heard that said even by Mr. West. He cannot be anti-Semitic because he's an actual Jew. He's the true Jew. The thing with that is, part of that is they believe the Ashkenazi Jews, which would be the more common Jews that you hear about now, the Jews with the more German sounding surnames, the Steins, the Bergs, the Shapiros, etc., etc., etc. They are imitations, they are imposters, and they have biblical quotes to go along with the belief that those are imposter Jews committing identity theft on the real Jews, which are the black people. Now, you can understand why, if you are an Ashkenazi Jew and you believe you are indeed a true Jew, such a thing would be very offensive to you. And again, it plays into the protocols of the Elders of Zion trope, where the Jews have some kind of underhanded business going on around the world, where they're trying to take the rightful place of someone else, etc., etc. And a part of that, in the movie that shared the documentary, he shared the link to, they also go on to deny that the Holocaust ever existed. And that's another common thing too, where they say that, no, the Germans didn't actually kill so many Jews. And you could understand why also that would be a very offensive thing. You're denying an atrocity that many people are intimately linked with. So that's where Mr. Irving stood. He shared a link to that and he refused to apologize for quite a while. And Mr. Irving is a controversial figure. He already stood against the NBA in refusing to be vaccinated. So again, similar to Mr. West, he was already out there waiting to be cancelled, as it were. This wasn't his first rounds of cancelling. So when he shared that and then he refused to apologize and the tension mounted, well, yeah. Eventually, it reached to the point where they were fining him, they were banning him, Nike split with him, and if you look at the requirements the league wanted from him, they basically wanted him to grovel and beg, as it were, and apologize and meet with this one and then meet with that one and say you're sorry and say you change your mind. And the thing is, I don't see that as being effective in doing what you wanted to do. If someone has the belief that the Jews are taking over the world, your way of getting them out of that belief is through Jewish power. Force them into a meeting with some Jews to say that you have to change your mind about that. I think that would work in the opposite direction, especially noting that the head of the NBA, I believe the NBA commissioner himself, is a Jew. You understand I just don't think it's a successful way of tackling these issues. But as I said, I understand why it's considered a racist trope. I understand why many people consider it dangerous, because we have seen in the 20th century where this has led. Funny enough with that, Adidas, who split ties with Kanye West over his comments, his anti-Semitic comments, Adidas was founded by a man who was literally, in the actual meaning of the word literally, a member of the Nazi party. Fought with the Nazis back in World War II, and then started up Adidas after all of that. Yeah. And it's actually named after the man. So maybe if Adidas is saying they are going to still sell Mr. West's shoe without his name on it, I guess his name is such a bad thing, well then maybe they could sell their shoe with it without the name of their founder on it. That Adidas name is an actual literal Nazi. So you can't have Yeezy on your shoe, but you could have the name of an actual Nazi. And you understand why when you look at things like this, it just doesn't seem like the real issue here is the anti-Semitism and finding a solution for it. There seems to be somewhat of a power play. All right. That's all I have for now. Tell me what you think. Do you understand all of this? Does this make sense? Do you think that these two men were indeed being anti-Semitic? Do you think they should apologize? Do you think they should stand with their view? Do you think they should try to understand things better and maybe separate the individuals from the group? Because that's literally how this whole racism goes. Do you see the parallels with the black community and crime? Drop a comment, tell me what you think. That's all I have for now. I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained, and I will see you in the next video.